I just want to be clear. I'm not an expert, and I'm not trying to make a video for experts. I'm just trying to make a video that might help someone else who was in the same spot that I was. I'll try to leave specifics out of it as much as I can. A little more than a year ago, I found myself in the most disorienting position of my entire life. As a result of an incident of intimate partner violence, I was arrested and charged. When I woke up the next morning, I was homeless. In today's video, I want to share what I've learned in my recovery since that night, and maybe offer some tools and resources that might help you if you find yourself in a similar situation. This video might be difficult for some to watch, and I understand. Because I understand. This might hurt like hell, but let's get at it. My name is Kate Madden, and I'm a transgender woman living in Calgary, Alberta. What I'm going to share has nothing to do with being trans, though. You can watch this video and try to find truth. You could try to point out the lies. But it's not fiction. These things happened. These things happened to me. And that matters. Søren Kierkegaard was a Danish philosopher in the 19th century. And he talked about how the most common form of despair was not being yourself. He came to a point in his life where money, faith, family, community had all changed in meaning and disappeared as he saw through it. In our own lives, what happens when others don't see us the way we want to be seen? And what happens when you try to understand just how you got there? When I was young, I was exposed to a lot of ancient Greek and Roman philosophy. Plato's Republic still remains one of my favorites, and the concept of the responsibility of the polis and the citizen to the polis. But it was the Stoics that really interested me. And maybe I came to them by way of Shakespeare, but it was the Stoics who captured my imagination in ancient Rome for sure. And I can't remember if it was Seneca or Epictetus, but they said that you're not as bad as they say you are. So I was told I was a narcissist, amongst other things. I was told I was a narcissist over and over and over. I went to multiple therapists, 2 in secret, all in an effort to figure out why I was a narcissist. Each therapist that I saw very quickly said, "You're not a narcissist. No, you're not a narcissist." But I didn't believe them. I couldn't believe them because I deserved to be called that because of my behavior. And obviously I am a narcissist if someone is saying that to me over and over and over. It turns out narcissists don't try to go heal themselves to make someone else feel better. I'm a lot of things, but clinically speaking, I'm not a narcissist. But I thought I was going crazy. I was being told these things, and I was questioning myself every which way. It was a very difficult mental process to go through. But I thought I was going crazy. Because surely my behavior demanded a diagnosis. And I was seeking help that wasn't really for me. It was to make someone else more comfortable. Because my needs didn't matter. Any attempt to discuss my needs were met as a threat. And not just in this moment, but over a long period of time. But these conversations with the therapists, in a therapeutic and clinical manner, led me to something called attachment theory. Attachment theory is the idea that our earliest formation still impacts us today in how we engage in relationship with others. And there's 4 main types of attachment personalities. And so that was the first thing that I worked on with a therapist, was just understanding what that meant, where my own attachment style fit, and how that had played out in all of my relationships through my entire life. Back to the Stoics, and maybe it was Seneca, but you're not as bad as they say you are. But the flip side of it is you're not as good as you think you are. And one of the things that I've learned through this whole process is you can still be a victim and not be innocent. I internalized my lack of self-worth after being told for years that I wasn't good enough. Being told things like, I'm not in the same league, or what's someone like you doing with someone like me? While all of this really has nothing to do with my gender identity, one of the things that I did really struggle with in that insecurity of my gender was I tried desperately to prove my worth and to be Superman. Literally, I had Superman shirts. I loved them. I wore them all the time. But I guess, like Kierkegaard discovered, it all meant nothing. Because I was seeking meaning externally rather than finding that meaning internally. And, I loved L'Étranger by Albert Camus. Loved it as a teenager. And one of the things he said about the absurdity of life as an existentialist is that meaning is what doesn't make you kill yourself. And what if you do want to kill yourself, or you've tried? Like, what's holding you? What is holding you? How about dopamine? So working with therapists, I was introduced to something that I began to recognize called a pattern of violence or a cycle of abuse. Did you know you could get addicted to abuse? I didn't. So the cycle of abuse or the pattern of violence can introduce that sensation. And the cycle starts with tensions building. You might be walking on eggshells around your partner, wondering what's going to happen next. Pulling up to the house, parking your car, wondering, what are you walking into? And so you're fearful, and this leads into the incident. And the incident can be emotional, sexual, or physical. The next step is reconciliation. And in the reconciliation is where you get your fix of dopamine. Like make-up sex, break-up sex, but you get blamed. And you go along with it. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I know, you're right. And so that dopamine, or that reconciliation, it leads to a period of calm in which you then begin to re-enter the cycle as the tensions build all over again. And in really abusive situations or long-term patterns, the period of calm can just disappear. What I learned was that boundaries can help break this pattern and help protect you. A challenge you might have is, as you communicate boundaries, you will in turn be met with ultimatums. And so what you need to internalize, rather than that sense of I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy, is you are good enough, you are worthy. And that will lead to your acceptance that they have a flawed view of you, and that's okay. A few months after my arrest, after some more incidents that had occurred, I sat on my therapist's couch and I sobbed and I asked, what is wrong with me? And so this led to the next big discovery for me. And I thought changing gender was the big thing and I would get to the top, but it turned out that was the little thing, which then enabled me to deal with a lot more other things. So hands down, being my authentic self, best thing I ever did, because it led to a lot of these realizations. And so we went through a checklist, my therapist and I checked off every single box on that list for codependency. Not just a little bit codependent, but raging codependent. And so what a codependent is really is a dysfunctional helper who enables someone else in their unhealthy patterns, whether that be physical health, financial health, emotional health, psychological health, and you enable that ongoing pattern of dysfunction. So yeah, this was never really about being trans, and it was just the start. I've really leaned on philosophy as I've worked through a lot of this, and just going back to the great minds that I was exposed to. And Jean-Paul Sartre talks about freedom and how we are only free if we accept the full weight of authenticity. The main goal I have in my life right now is to address the fourth concept that I was introduced to, and that's a window of tolerance, specifically in a post-traumatic situation. And so within that window of tolerance, you have an optimal response, which as mature, caring, kind adults, we all want to be in. However, as a result of trauma and that fight or flight, it can become really easy to move outside that window. And so there's two ways that you move outside the window. And one is into a state of hyper-arousal, and the other is into hypo-arousal. When you're in a state of hyper-arousal, you have an increased sensitivity and hypervigilance. Like you're watching, you're waiting. And you gotta think that evolutionary biology dictates that we're the descendants of the most hypervigilant people. So it comes pretty naturally to us. And so going the other way, into hypoarousal, you become paralyzed and your cognitive functions seem to be impaired. And it's possible to go back and forth between the two as well. And I'm sure that I do go back and forth. So my goal is to figure out how to widen the window and get back to that optimal function, that optimal state. Because again, like the Stoics say, and this time I know for a fact it's Epictetus, it's not what's done to you that matters, it's how you react that matters. Another author I really like is Tim Ferriss, and he describes the Stoics as an operating system for a high-stress environment, and I can't agree with him more. And I agree with him about a lot of things. And so as I went from that existential crisis into discovering attachment theory, moving into pattern of violence, discovering I'm codependent, learning about a window of tolerance, a lot of questions were asked in my head about my past, all of my relationships, as a child, as a parent, as a sibling, as a friend, as a lover, as a spouse, as an employee. I really broke down to try to understand. I really went through my value system and wanted to understand what motivates me, or what had motivated me in the past as I sought that external validation and that external meaning. This led me to wondering about love. I began to question whether I had ever been in love. Once I realized that I wasn't my own source of happiness, I began to break my life down. And like Aristotle in the Reductio ad Absurdum, I took 5 years of Latin, reduction to absurdity, I was brought back to one question. And that was, had I ever really loved? Because how could I if I was so unlovable? These questions about love were made even more intense in my head once I was introduced to the final concept that I've learned in the last year and a bit. And that's trauma bonding. What trauma bonding is it's a misuse of excitement with regards to fear or sex or happiness. And this can be manifested in a bunch of different ways. Very quick to be affectionate with someone. Grand gestures like moving, relocating. Endless time together. You know, Gibran. In The Prophet, Khalil Gibran talks about marriage as time apart, where you can come back together. I remember reading that at a wedding, desperately wanting that. In trauma bonding, there's very few boundaries, and this can also manifest itself in things like wanting everyone to know about a relationship or being suspicious. Looking through somebody's phone or demanding explanations of conversations with people. Controlling who you see, interact with, even do business with. Ultimately, I felt really stuck and unhappy once I began asking those basic existential questions. What made me happy? Who am I? And as I took the steps towards myself, that's what led to that incident. I was faced with the basic question, which led to an understanding of these different things, of attachment theory, of the cycle of abuse, of codependency, of trauma bonding, and that aspirational goal of wanting to be in the window of tolerance. But the patterns began to reduce as my ability to recognize these situations increased. It's not to say they're eliminated. And so, as I began to understand all these things, that iterative and intense pattern began to change and reduce in frequency. There's really just 4 things that I think will help get you there. One is to seek therapy. I first began reaching out to my brother-in-law, and I'm so grateful that he was there for me, because I didn't feel I was good enough to talk to my siblings. And thank you, Mark, for knowing that I was good enough. But and you need those people in your life. Family, friends, chosen family, logical family. But you need a clinical opinion, a therapeutic opinion. So get therapy. Go to support groups. They're free if you can't afford a therapist. Codependence Anonymous. There's 3 in this city. It's a city of 1 million people, and there are 3. I think it's important to give yourself space to grieve, whatever that means to you. And it'll hit you in different waves and different manners, and it's okay to miss that person. in that relationship. I'm still struggling with how to reconcile the memories. And I hope one day I find peace with that. But I'm not there yet. In terms of processing, I think just getting it out is one of the most effective ways, whether that be journaling, writing, art. I did a lot of photography, really intense photography, and journaling on social media. My need to process led me here to YouTube in a lot of ways. If you look through some of my earlier videos, you can see that pain. If you look through all my videos, really. Community has really been a godsend in the last year. And find your tribe. For me, that's been the queer community, the LGBT community. And I'm so grateful to be able to give back with the organizations I volunteer with, as well as to just met some of the most incredible, passionate, and awesome people that I've ever had the privilege of knowing. All of these are forms of self-care. And I think self-care, self-love, you need to be self-aware. You need to recognize when you need help, when to reach out, when to take space to yourself and just be alone. To understand your energy. And so those are really, I think, some key things that I've learned about myself and what and how I got to where I got. And so just going back to being arrested, I was fortunate that I wasn't charged with assault or anything else. I did something stupid, and the charge was withdrawn. My legal bill was $273. But the RCMP officer leaned over as she completed her second investigation that night, rubbed my arm, and it was the first time anyone had said to me, "You're the victim here." And I'm not going to rationalize or say I deserved what happened. I'm sorry that you're going through the things you're going through that led you to this video. If there's one parting thing that I can say, is that life always gets better.